Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about the Colorado Rapids in the Moving Forward series episode, and after a historic season that the Rapids had last season, many were questioning whether or not if they can continue that this season, or was last season basically a fluke? Well, yeah, they definitely did not continue the success that they had last season, although I will say this, I still don't think last year was a fluke. I think last year was a year where the Rapids just were one of those teams that proven that the Moneyball approach and also having that good team spirits and also good coaching can actually get you to the top of the Western Conference. I think this is now kind of a very underrated aspect, knowing the fact that nowadays in MLS it's all about spending money and also getting some good young talent and develop them and eventually ship them all off to bigger leagues. But the Rapids proved that, with the Moneyball approach and almost kind of a MLS, I would say 2.0 approach that they decided to do last year, still works in this league. Now, unfortunately, with this Moneyball approach, you definitely want to make sure that you, of course, make the right signing. And even in a Moneyball approach, you still need to try to improve your team. And for a while, the fans have been demanding the front office to spend some money and to improve the team. And most importantly, actually they decided to sign a designated player, and it turns out that of course was not the case. And yeah, the Rapids basically suffered dearly because of that, with them finishing an 11-10-13 record and finished with 43 points. They scored 46 goals this season, but they gave up 57 goals this year. I mean, yeah, when you give up 55 plus goals in the season, you're not going to go very far in the league, and they have a minus 11 goal differential. And again, safe to say that backline really regressed after what we saw last season, which was one of their strong point of their run to finish at the top of the Western Conference. And this year they of course dropped all the way down to 10th in the Western Conference, did not make it to the playoffs. Now in terms of highlights for the Colorado Rapids, and I'm not gonna lie, this was probably one of the toughest teams in terms of me actually finding highlights. And that's saying something because, I mentioned before how when I do the Moving Forward series, especially in the beginning of this series, when I look at every team and how their season has gone, usually the first couple of episodes, it's the toughest to find some highlights because those are the teams that I usually review their season that finish near the bottom of their respective conference. And when you fall, when you basically finish around that spot, and the fact that there's even some teams I've already mentioned have a hugely disappointing season, I've been kind of cherry picking in terms of the highlights. But in the Colorado Rapids case, I absolutely am cherry picking in terms of putting the two highlights that they had, because like I said, when you look at this team, there was really not much you can say that was a highlight. I mean, it's not like they had a good U.S. Open Cup run, or I don't think they won the Rocky Mountain Cup against RSL this season, or the fact that they had any part of the season where they kind of go on an incredible stretch, except August. And that's one of the thing about the highlights, is that August was kind of their best month, where they had a stretch where they won 3 out of 4, and that was kind of where maybe a Rapids fan would believe that maybe things can of course turn around. And then September happened, and they basically they collapse, and well, not really collapse, but more like go back to where they've been throughout the majority of the year, which is just being a mediocre kind of team at best. But they also had those crazy 2-game stretch during August between the New York Red Bulls versus Minnesota. In that Red Bulls game, they somehow in some way won 5-4 against the New York Red Bulls, and they showed that tenacity and kind of just show some grittiness that we saw from the Rapids last season in that game. And it turns out that actually was their only road win of the season. And then of course against Minnesota, pretty much the same thing, although in that game they were kind of leading for most part of it. The Loons did try to come back a couple of times, but they were able to fend them off. So at least during those 2-game stretch, if you're a Rapids fan, you probably enjoy that stretch, even though those kind of stretch maybe gave this team false hope that they are really truly back and ready to make a playoff run. Now we go to the lowlights, and there was definitely a ton of lowlights for this season. I mean, to begin with, the grit and team spirit that have shown last season, it was all gone this year. Like, we talked about last year how I mentioned Robin Fraser probably got robbed in terms of winning the Coach of the Year award last season, and we talk about him coming into this Rapids team and really only, I think, his second season, he has got this team that, on paper, this should not be a team that you would think that can finish top of the Western Conference, but because of that grittiness and that team spirit that this team, of course, has been able to build around, they were able to grind out wins and able to finish at the top of the Western Conference. But unfortunately, this year, that has been kind of gone. And also, I think this is where you maybe could have the argument, the fact that last season was kind of a fluke, because there were definitely certain players from last year's team that were completely overperforming. Like there was a ton of players that you wouldn't think that they would put up some great numbers, and they did. And that you just had a feeling that production level was going to drop. But even in the standards of what we saw this season, I think that level dropped way below, to a point where there was definitely, they've really gone from a season where they were full of overperformer to a season where there were a bunch of guys that were clearly underperforming and not pulling their weight in terms of at least guiding this team to kind of a mediocre kind of season. And then, of course, the second thing that is a lowlights is, besides Diego Rubio, there was no attacking threat in this team. And that's also kind of one thing that has to be disappointing if you're the Rapids, where, all this season we talk about who exactly is going to be the number 9 and even the number 10 of this team. And they kind of had that with Diego Rubio just scoring game after game. He definitely had his best career year in his career with 16 goals, but nobody really kind of stepped up. And that's when you only have like one good player on your team that can score the goals on the attacking threat, which is good. But if you just have one player like that, you're not going to go very far in the league. And it was pretty clear that they just had no attacking threat. Like, I think not until when they did finally decided to make a desperation move and get Jarzy Zardes in their team that they didn't really had any good attacking threat. And even then, Jarzy Zardes kind of struggled doing his first couple of games with the Rapids. He only kind of started to catch fire near the end of the season, and by then it was kind of a lost cause because the Rapids were way far behind and just had almost no chance in terms of making the playoffs. And then the last thing that is a lowlights for this Rapids team, and I know this probably won't be the last lowlights, there's just a lot of lowlights you gotta say that the Rapids suffered this season, but just for condensing reasons, I'm going to condense it to the last point, the fact that the road form that, for the past couple of years, this has been one of the weakness of the Colorado Rapids. I mean, I think last season was kind of the outlier, where this team, when you look at for the past couple of years, or even in the past decade or so, they have never been a team that has been good on the road. Like, I think besides last year and that year in 2016 when they were able to finish second and made it all the way to the Western Conference final, they were not a good road team. And this year, it once again showing it again, where I talk about how in that game against the Red Bulls, that was the only win that they had the entire season, and that's the case. I mean, yeah, one win out of the 17 road games that they had. And especially nowadays with the way that, I know there's that philosophy, of course, getting home wins and then also get your resort on the road, but because of how the playoffs is now settled, and with the way that there's it's getting harder and harder every single season to get into the playoffs, that kind of philosophy, it might work in years past, but because of how tight the playoffs is in this season, it simply are not going to cut it. And while the Rapids were a very good home team this season, they just were not good enough on the road, and just lost way too many games and not getting the amount of road games that they had. Like, I feel like if you're going to be a playoff team, or at least if you're going to follow that philosophy, you need to at least have 2 or 3 wins if you even have a shot of making the playoffs. But simply just getting one and becoming one of the worst team on the road is definitely not going to help your causes in terms of making the playoffs. Now, in terms of the top goal scorer, I already mentioned Diego Rubio with 16 goals, followed by Jarzy Zardes with 9 goals. By the way, Jarzy Zardes is no longer with this team, and this is another thing that kind of has had a lot of Rapids fans kind of frustrated, because yes, I know he kind of got off to a slow start, but then he kind of picked up near the end of the season, and I thought for sure that he was going to be maybe staying for another season, and no, they decided to move on from him, and they're back in this doldrum of the fact that who exactly is going to be their main attacking threat besides Diego Rubio. Then you got Jonathan Lewis with 5 goals, Lalo Sapubikov with 4 goals, and then Mark Anthony K with 3 goals. Top assist leader, you got Michael Barrios with 8 assists. Diego Rubio with 7 assists. Brian Acosta with 3 assists. Lucas Esteves with 3 assists. And Jonathan Lewis with 3 assists. Now, revelation and MVP, I mean, that's easy. It's got to be Diego Rubio. I mean, there's no doubt that if there's one player that definitely punched above their weight and definitely was not the main reason why this team fall off the map compared to the previous season, is Diego Rubio. Like 16 goals this season. That's the most he has had in his career. And that, as much as I know he is a guy that has always become like the villain of MLS with his fiasco and stuff, you cannot marvel the season that you can not misunderstand the incredible season that he has had. And again, it's unfortunate that it's been kind of largely overshadowed because of the fact that that nobody else on this Rapids team are stepping up in terms of the goal scoring department, and not to mention the Rapids are kind of a mediocre team. Disappointment for this Rapids team, and yeah, this was definitely one of the other tough category. I mean, again, anytime when I have to kind of have to really cherry pick in terms of highlights, and also really have to pick hard in terms of picking which player is a disappointment, you did not have a good season, and there was definitely a long list that I could have picked in this Rapids team that is a disappointment. But I'm gonna go with Jonathan Lewis as the biggest disappointment, and I think in reality, that's kind of just sums up the career of Jonathan Lewis. I mean, remember a couple of years ago when he was with NYCFC and how there's a lot of people say he's kind of the next best thing, and he has really developed into a player that he can definitely break into the U.S. men's national team. And then he kind of made a very odd decision to go to the Colorado Rapids, but he definitely thrived in the first couple of seasons for the Rapids. But boy, this season, yeah, this was not only a huge step back, but this was probably the year that really kind of fall off the map, and just kind of almost a rock bottom moment for Jonathan Lewis in his career. I mean, it is really sad to see a guy that once had such a high potential, and a guy that, a couple of years ago we talked about he could be a future U.S. men's national team number 9 for this team, and could be one of the players that can really be the goal scorer for us in the World Cup. And he has gone from that player to a player that is just kind of a complete shell of himself, and that, I'm really hoping that eventually he can rediscover his form, because, again, he has talent. Like, you can definitely see he has talent to be that player that could be be one of those top American goal scorer in MLS, and eventually does make that big move over to Europe. But unfortunately, I just kind of feel like his confidence is just completely shattered. And this is also where, I think for him, maybe he might need to think about making a move, because when you always see players, especially in the striker position, where your confidence is just completely shattered, and you have no confidence whatsoever in front of goal, you need a change of scenery. And I think that's kind of the case for Jonathan Lewis. Him staying with the Rapids is not going to help his cause if you want to resurrect what was once looking like a very promising career. Now, moving forward for the Rapids, they need to use their DP spot. I mean, I think they're the only team right now in MLS to have not used one of their designated player spot, and that this has been also why a lot of Rapids fan has been very frustrated with this front office, because, again, there's a reason why the DP spots are created. I mean, you can use those DP spots in terms of finding the next big name player, and so far that just doesn't seem like is in the interest of the front office. And again, this is all part of the Moneyball approach, and also kind of part of the MLS 2.0 or even the MLS 1.0 kind of approach, because back then we didn't had a thing called the designated player spot. But that can only take you as far until what we saw last season in the playoffs, where they just lacked that playoff experience and lacked that quality that they had against the Portland Timbers. And that the fact that the front office decided not to address that, and still yet to address that, I can understand a lot of Rapids fans are very frustrated with the front office, and demand the front office to spend some money. And I also can relate it to that, because as a Quakes fan, and how I'm also frustrated with the front office not spending the money to bring some good players. Yeah, that's got to be something that it drives fans absolutely nuts. They need some more attacking support for Diego Rubio. And again, this goes back to the DP spot. Use those designated player spot to get those attacking support. Now, the good news is they definitely did bring back one of the key pieces that I think they sorely miss in Cole Bassett this season as he returned with the Colorado Rapids, and that, you know, he definitely can be that guy, could be the playmaker for the team. But still, you know, that's just a re-sign that we've seen before. They need to have more than that. They need to, of course. Again, I remember just a year or two ago when they decided to go into the transfer market and bring those proven MLS player. And again, I thought that was kind of maybe the changing point of this Rapids team, and this front office decided to kind of change the way how they view this team and started to make those ambitious move. And the fact that they haven't really done that is again, just goes back to the frustration that the fan base has with this front office. And then the last thing moving forward for them is they better hope the back line can bounce back. I mean, you know, there's no doubt that back line had a really rough year. Guys like Lalo Zabuka definitely had a huge regression. Same with Danny Wilson, and even Austin Trusty had a big regression, and he's another player that I mentioned. I mean, there's definitely certain player on this Rapids team that used to have a high projectile to do very well and even break into the national team, and that just have not been the case ever since. Or actually, I'm sorry about Austin Trusty. I think he's already moved on from this team. I'm thinking of somebody else, but yeah, I mean, again for this team, this upcoming season, you know, I mean, I feel like this upcoming season could also be a pivotal season for this team, because, you know, with the way that they didn't really add a lot of things to this team, is this going to be like another mediocre year that they're going to have? And that it kind of sucks to see that happen, because, you know, this Rapids fan base, they definitely deserve better than this, and especially with the way that you know, last year they had so much promise that things could go. I can understand why there's some that are very pessimistic and saying that, well, with the way that the front office seem like they don't care and not making any signings, it feels like maybe it's going to be the same old heading into the next season. But let me know in the comments below, if you're a Rapids fan, what do you think of this moving forward series, and what are some of the highlights, if there's any, and lowlights, and there's definitely plenty about last season, the revelation and disappointment, and also moving forward, how is this team going to look like the team that could predictably once again be a bottom feeder in the Western Conference heading into this upcoming season. But let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.